1960, a new decade, new hopes, new horizons in a changing world. The United Nations set out the challenge to make the world a better place in the years ahead. It adopted unanimously the milestone declaration on the granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples. Another landmark event that marked the beginning of real progress for millions of the world's poor occurred in that year too. The creation of OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. At the time, this was lost among the headlines, but this soon changed, and the world took notice. The first move towards the establishment of OPEC took place in 1949, when Venezuela suggested to Iran, Iraq, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia that they exchange views and explore avenues for regular and closer communications. The need for closer cooperation became more apparent in 1959, when the powerful international oil companies unilaterally reduced the posted price for a barrel of crude oil on world markets. This price was a notional rate set by the companies and used as a reference for their payments of income tax and royalties to the governments of host countries. For the companies known as the Seven Sisters, this helped preserve profits. They largely controlled all aspects of the business outside the former Soviet Union: exploration, production, exports, processing, marketing, and most importantly, prices. But for the host governments, the effect was simple. It reduced their income. As a result, in 1959, the first Arab Petroleum Congress was held in Cairo, with both Iran and Venezuela invited as observers. This adopted a resolution calling on oil companies to consult with the governments of the producing countries before taking any decision on oil prices. It also set up the General Agreement on the establishment of an Oil Consultation Commission. In August 1960, the oil companies reduced further the posted price. In response, in September 1960, a conference was held in Baghdad, and this is where OPEC history begins. The conference was attended by representatives of the governments of the 5 founding members: Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. The treaty establishing OPEC was registered at the United Nations Secretariat in November 1962. With time, its membership increased, as 9 more countries joined the organization. Qatar in 1961, Indonesia and Libya in 1962, Abu Dhabi in 1967. Its membership was later transferred to the United Arab Emirates. Algeria in 1969, Nigeria in 1971, Ecuador in 1973, Gabon in 1975, and Angola in 2007. The second conference decided to base the OPEC Secretariat in Geneva, Switzerland, where the first meeting of the OPEC Board of Governors convened in May 1961. In April 1965, the OPEC conference decided to move its headquarters to Vienna, Austria, and a host agreement was signed shortly after with the Austrian government. In March 1977, OPEC moved along the Danube Canal. In November 2009, into the present Secretariat premises in the Vienna 1st District. OPEC is a permanent intergovernmental organization with the following objectives: to coordinate and unify the petroleum policies of member countries and determine the best means for safeguarding their interests, individually and collectively. To find ways and means of ensuring oil market stability. To give due regard at all times to the interests of the producing nations and to the need to secure a steady income for them, an efficient, economic and regular supply of petroleum to consuming nations, and a fair return on their capital to those investing in the petroleum industry. The next 5 decades witnessed many crises in the oil sector, and throughout these periods OPEC was to develop into a major force for stability through its policies. In June 1968, the organization adopted a declaratory statement of petroleum policy in member countries. The statement called on member countries to undertake as far as feasible direct exploration and development of hydrocarbon resources, to seek participation in the equity of existing concessions, to establish conservation rules to be followed by operating oil companies, and to determine posted or tax reference prices by the government. This move was endorsed by the United Nations a year later, when the General Assembly voted unanimously for a declaration of social progress in which permanent sovereignty of national resources was a major principle. The first summit of OPEC's heads of state and government took place in Algiers in 1975. The summit declaration sought to strengthen the relationship between producer and consumer nations. It directed that OPEC should seek oil market stability based on justice, mutual understanding, and a genuine concern for the well-being of all peoples. The second summit was held in Caracas in the year 2000. There, the organization reaffirmed its commitment to achieve sustainable order and stability in the international oil market, with reasonable prices and fair returns to investors. Riyadh hosted the third summit in November 2007. The OPEC heads of state agreed that the key to ensuring sustainable development are 3 mutually supportive pillars. Stability of the global energy markets. Energy for sustainable development. Energy and environment. As the world changes on all fronts, so must petroleum-related strategies. One good strategy to address these challenges is through cooperation and dialogue among OPEC member countries, petroleum producers in general, between producers and consumers, and between OPEC and other organizations such as International Energy Forum, International Energy Agency, and the World Bank. The history of the OPEC seminar goes back to 1969
and since 2001 the OPEC International Seminar Series takes place every 2 years, providing a veritable platform for cooperation and dialogue among various stakeholders and academics in the industry. With 100% of its membership from developing countries and with per capita GDP of less than $5,000 today, OPEC is in a unique position to appreciate and understand the problems and challenges of development.
It is this empathy that informed the founding of the OPEC Fund for International Development, OFID, in 1976 with the mandate to foster social and economic progress in the developing world. So far, citizens of over 120 countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean, the Middle East and Europe have benefited from OFID's development and grant programs. Collectively, OPEC member countries, through their various bilateral and multilateral aid institutions, have given assistance worth over $100 billion to developing countries. Today, OPEC's membership draws from 12 sovereign nations on 3 continents. Together, these countries hold 79% of the world's proven oil reserves, provide 44% of global crude oil production. Energy production and consumption are vital to our lives. Petroleum's remarkable qualities allow mankind to use it for diverse purposes. Ever vigilant, OPEC will be there, providing the petroleum upon which modern development relies, stabilizing the oil market, combating poverty and promoting worldwide economic prosperity, while protecting the planet that nurtures all the nations of the world. In its 5 decades of existence, OPEC has helped to create a new world. Whatever the doubts about the future, the certainty is that OPEC will continue to be a partner for progress. For the sake of our families, our children, and the generations to follow, OPEC will be there as an important instrument of change.